So I originally recorded a video for this topic last week, and I was thinking about uploading it, but I just decided against it because it got a little bit ranty, and it was a vlog, and it was over half an hour long, and I don't know. I just kind of went. I was kind of going back and forth on it, and I just decided against uploading it. So I still kind of wanted to talk about the topic. However, what I'm doing right now, as you guys can see, is I'm just doing commentary off of gameplay. So this is going to have to suffice in the meantime, at least. But yeah, I was going to discuss this last week, but just decided against that. I know everyone and their mother has already talked about this demo. So I still wanted to get my thoughts on it because I do see a lot of positive comments for this demo, as there should be, but also a lot of whiners in particular about the way that this demo was running in particular. So I wanted to discuss sort of all that in a more condensed version in this, it's not live commentary, but it's pre-recorded. So anyway, I watched the gameplay demo of the Unreal Engine 5, and I was super, super impressed. I really loved what I saw. The environment looked photorealistic. The lighting looked amazing. And, they had these technical engineers talking about how they're able to, render all this stuff. And there's, billions of triangles and, all this detail. They're using film quality assets, 8K textures. It just looked amazing, and I don't think there's a single person here who can sit there and say that they weren't impressed by what they saw. It was just a refinement of the image completely, and it looked amazing. The lighting in particular looked photorealistic. All the environments, detail, everything just looked fantastic. Really, the only thing that I can complain about was just the water simulation. It still looks very much similar to what we have now, but water is going to be super hard. And the character model as well, they went for a more animated type of character more than a realistic interpretation, which I think was a smart move because we still haven't hit that point where we can realistically render a face and have and sort of trick your mind into you believing that you're actually looking at a real person. And so, we gotten really far in terms of facial animations and, being able to replicate complex emotions, but we still have a ways to go in terms of the eyes and the structure of the faces and all these little nuanced details that sort of make you believe that you're looking at a real human face. So, again, we come a long way, but that they went for a more animated type of character who looked a little bit more cartoony, had a little bit bigger eyes, So I think it was perfectly fine. It was a good fit for this demo, and she still looked amazing. So I really liked what I saw here, and the fact that we were getting environments of this complexity, of this detail running on a game console, the next generation game console, I thought it was a very, very, very good showing for the PlayStation 5 in particular. And I think it was more impressive than anything that we saw at the Microsoft Xbox Series X gameplay reveal video that they did. They, even though Microsoft showed games coming out, or really trailers for games coming out, we didn't see any raw gameplay. And I think that most people can agree that there was nothing really there that blew you away besides maybe 2 or 3 of those trailers, which again it wasn't actual gameplay shots. It was just cinematic flyby cameras. So what we got here was actual real-time behind the shoulders gameplay. And they proved it by moving the game camera around. They were moving individual assets around. I mean, it was super, super impressive, right? And a lot of people have said in particular that they are very impressed, and they should be. This is what we sort of expected or hoped, I should say, for a next generation here, is that we're just going to have environments that just look really, really photorealistic. And I think that we got a really, really close in this particular gameplay demo from Unreal Engine 5. However, there seems to be this group of people who are complaining, not at the demo itself, but at the lack of power of these consoles, saying that, the PlayStation 5 is super weak because it's running this at 1440p and at 30 frames per second. This isn't next gen. And this really irritates me because this actually came up shortly after the Xbox Series X gameplay reveal for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. They asked the developers, is this going to be 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X? And developers said that, we're working on targeting the highest frame rate, but at the moment it's 30 frames per second. And immediately people are in uproar because it's not 60 FPS, this isn't next gen, and everyone's just complaining and whining. And it's interesting because I remember that this same conversation happened with the PS4 and the Xbox One, and this has happened time and time and time again for each console generation. Everyone's wondering, are we finally going to get 60 FPS as the mandate, as the requirement for next gen consoles? Is this going to be the generation where every single game that comes out is going to be 60 FPS? And it's hilarious because that never seems to be the case, These games come out and the developers always target 30 FPS. They try to hit 60 when they can, when they have the budget for it, but a lot of them put the power into other places. And, going into the next generation here, I wasn't really expecting 60 FPS being, available for all games. And to be honest, even for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I wasn't expecting 60 frames per second. What I was expecting was a native 4K presentation with the PC graphics on Ultra and ray tracing, which would offer a refinement over the Xbox One X version of the game, which I suspect is going to be similar to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was a dynamic 4K, but, the game running at medium to high settings and at 30 frames per second. And that's what I expect for Valhalla anyway. That I think is a realistic expectation, because as powerful as these consoles are, part of that power is diverted for ray tracing, and ray tracing being, this new graphical leap in rendering and stuff like that. So a lot of this power is going to be spent on these ray trace reflections, the ray trace global illumination. And, interesting to point out is that the Unreal Engine 5 demo that we saw wasn't using ray tracing whatsoever, which I thought was even more impressive, that you were getting results like that and you weren't seeing ray tracing used at all, which means I guess they were able to put the budget of power that they had left over from the lack of using ray tracing into just making the environment look super realistic. And to be honest, how you get to photorealism doesn't much interest me as just getting there, So, I just see these complaints going on, and people are in an uproar over the fact that we're not getting 60 FPS mandated in all our games, and how can we not expect the big budget open world Assassin's Creed game, which is going to be massive probably, running at 60 frames per second. I agree that will be impressive, but I just think that that's unrealistic, And the fact that the demo was running at 1440p, the Unreal Engine 5, it was a dynamic resolution, mind you, but Epic says it was mostly running at 1440p. Here's the thing, resolution is slowly starting to become irrelevant, and I'll explain why. We have come so far in simply using post-processing techniques that the image is no longer, regardless of what resolution you're running at, you don't really notice sharpness as much as cleanliness anymore. So when we have these games running at, either 4K or 1800p or 1440p, there's so much post-processing going on, from temporal anti-aliasing to depth of field, to film grain and motion blur, and it's all these effects and restructuring, keeping in mind, which was Unreal Epic Games was using a restructuring technique in that demo to upscale it to 4K, I guess, and it looked fantastic, And it's interesting because there was a time, I think, where you could sit there and complain about the lack of resolution in games, especially early on this generation. Early on this generation, I was fully expecting 1080p to be the standard across all games. But what happened when these consoles came out is we got 900p for Battlefield 4, on the PS4, and 720p on the Xbox One. We started seeing sub HD games, Watch Dogs, again, 900p on the PS4, 792p or whatever it was on the Xbox One. We started seeing, the lack of 1080p content. And then what happened is we got these next gen these current gen refresh consoles like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X to help get us closer to 4K. But I played a lot of these games, especially more so from the PlayStation side, because the Xbox One X does do a fantastic job at least delivering you 4K or damn near close to 4K content, right? But on the PS4 Pro, they use checkerboard rendering. I mean, I just played Days Gone a few months ago. That game looks native 4K to me, you know? And yeah, it's using temporal anti-aliasing. It's not real 4K, but perceptibly, you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference, especially when you're standing still and you're putting your face up against the screen. It looks pixel sharp, you know? And so we just come a long way in terms of post-processing, and developers are less concerned with getting sharpness out of the image than they are with making the image clean and free of aliasing. You know, and to add that point, you know, I've now have been watching 4K Blu-rays for quite some time, and a lot of 4K Blu-rays are not actually 4K. You know, a lot of films are finished and rendered as 2K digital intermediates, and so what happens is you get upscaling in these films. And listen, you know, the biggest impact that you get from 4K movies is not actually the resolution, it's the fact that these movies have HDR, and sometimes this can be such a transformative experience from what you get from its Blu-ray counterpart that it just gives you a whole different way to respect filmmaking. And, you know, I've watched so many films out there, and yes, I noticed the 4K films when they come on. If you, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, for example, is actually both shot in native 4K, and they used IMAX cameras as well, so the IMAX shots look a little bit softer, but you get the wider field of view, yeah? You know, so I noticed the sharpness for those, but again, it's the HDR that gives the big impact, and a lot of 4K Blu-rays, despite them saying 4K on the box, are not really 4K. A lot of movies are actually 2K digital intermediates, mind you, you know? And I think that's the point, that when we go into here with the next generation of games, if games start looking photorealistic, and they start running at 1440p or 1800p, and maybe they're not native 4K or whatever, but if it's clean and free of aliasing, and if it's upscale, especially these upscaling techniques like checkerboard rendering and temporal injection, these games look effectively 4K anyway. You know, and especially in motion, don't tell me you guys notice all this stuff in motion. They have all this motion blur turned on and film grain turned on to make it look as clean and as cinematic as possible. You know, I'm not sitting here noticing sharpness when I'm trying to kill people quickly in Call of Duty. You know, I'm busy playing the game. And yeah, you know, I will always appreciate an engine that's able to push more pixels and push a higher frame rate. Yes, but we just come so far to the point where it's starting to become a non-issue anymore. You know, it's about the cleanliness of the image, no aliasing artifacts, you know, depth of field, high quality depth of field effects, film grain, and motion blur. And we can use these other techniques, you know, DLSS by NVIDIA, the deep learning super sampling. I mean, Digital Foundry does comparisons all the time, and they literally zoom into the image by 200%, you know, to the point where you can see the pixel breakups barely. And the DLSS upscaling algorithm that they have in their games, the games that work with it, looks so close to the native 4K presentation that from your standard viewing distance, even if you were sitting up close, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference anyway. So why does it matter? And that's my point I'm making. I see a lot of people sitting here complaining about the lack of the fact that these consoles are weak because, oh, the most photorealistic game demo that we saw wasn't running at native 4K. And I sit there and I'm just like, but if it looks native 4K due to the upscaling that they're using, and if it's free from jaggies, you know, then what do we care? It looks photorealistic anyway. You know, this is better than what we've seen before, you know? And to the point of frame rate, you know, yes, games will always play better at 60 FPS. That is a fact. No one can deny that, you know? But again, if you care about frame rate, get a computer. That's all I can say. If frame rate is such an important factor to you that it is the difference between you enjoying a game and you not enjoying a game, get a PC. You'll be much happier. Any game you want will run at 60 FPS and beyond if you want it to. If you have those high refresh rate monitors, you can enjoy games at 144 Hz, 200 frames per second, Hell, I think they have 240 frames per second monitors right now, 240 hertz. You know, if you want to do that, then go ahead and get a PC and do that. You'll be much happier. But I just feel like, you know, for the people who care about frame rate, you have a PC already. You know, you have a game console because it's simplistic, it's easy to use, it's just plug and play. You know, you don't have to deal with all that crap. And there's just no reason, you know, again, if it's a question of power, we just saw the most photorealistic game demo that's pushing billions of triangles on the screen at once, running on a PlayStation 5, a console that's probably going to cost $500 or $600. That is fucking impressive. That is an achievement. That is one hell of an accomplishment, and that is one hell piece of technology that's able to run that. It's going to be sitting in your living room, and it's going to be able to render environments like that. Hell yeah, that's exciting, man. That is next generation quality visuals, you know? So yeah, it's not running at native 4K, but again, all these techniques, you'll barely tell the difference anyway. So I just don't see it being a big issue. And you know, I know some people tell me, you know, listen, I get headaches, I start getting motion sickness if the game's not running at 60 FPS. I'm sorry to say this to you, but that's a personal problem. The majority of people don't have an issue with 30 frames per second. That's why it's the mandate. When you start going below 30 FPS, yes, you notice that. Yes, it becomes unresponsive, and it starts impacting your enjoyment of the game. But this isn't an issue. 30 FPS has never been an issue. That's why it's been the standard for decades at this point. And as we go into a new generation here, it's not about the frame rate that's going to be changing. I think it's just about the complexity in the environment and getting us closer to photorealism, and you know, increasing our post-processing pipeline so that we can clean up the image and put that power and divert it to elsewhere, you know? So there's a lot of stuff to be excited about, but I feel like that needs to be said because, you know, really, this generation that we are in, you know, it started off, and the PS4 and the Xbox One were they're very lacking in terms of power, and I think that we saw that clearly up front with you know, games like Battlefield 4 and even Call of Duty Ghosts, which I believe was, although 1080p on the PS4, it was 720p on the Xbox One. You know, so we've seen this generation at the beginning, just the lack of power, and games weren't really impressing us. But what we're getting this generation, the leap in processing power, the leap in graphics power, ray tracing included in all this stuff, I mean, this is quite an accomplishment. And to see Unreal Engine 5 in its full glory, looking damn near close to photorealistic, is very impressive, and it's something to be excited about. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I appreciate you all watching this video. Please share your thoughts with me on what you guys think about what we just discussed today. And I look forward to seeing more from both Epic and Sony. Hopefully we'll get a PS5 reveal soon. I am hearing some rumors that is going to be coming up in the next few weeks. So it's coming, man. But I'm excited, and what I saw from Epic was fantastic, and I could give two shits if it was running at 1440p. It looked photorealistic anyway, and there's no jaggies. It's being upscaled. It looks good. It looks fucking amazing, actually. All right? Get over it.